This is Austin Liti Limits, where authors talk to authors about books and the craft of storytelling. Sponsored by Blue Ink Review, because typing the end is just the beginning. Find out more at blueinkreview.com. In this episode, our Scott Semigran talks with Philip Elliott, the author of Porno Valley. Philip's debut novel, a noir crime story, Nobody Move, won Best First Novel Award from the Crime Writers Canada. His new book, Porno Valley, is alternately gripping and hilarious. He lives in Vancouver, Canada with his wife and spoiled pug, and where he is never not listening to rock and roll.
Welcome to the show, Philip Elliott.
Thank you for having me.
How's it going in Canada up there?
It's nice in the summer.
Is it hot right now?
Yeah, there was like that crazy heat wave stuff. I think it's creeping back, so I'm a bit nervous.
Yeah, I have some family in Montana, and it's hotter there than it is here in Texas, that's pretty nuts.
Yeah, well, just recently I think it reached degrees that higher than it had ever been recorded in Texas or even Los Angeles or anything.
Right.
That's frightening. An entire town burned down not far away.
That's nuts.
To the ground. Yeah.
Let's talk about something more fun. This is your latest novel. It'll be out later this. Can you tell us the release date for Porno Valley?
The 24th of August.
August. So yeah, that's coming up. So you have a very economical narrative style, and I know you also write screenplays. And some of the way that you write in this book reminds me of screenplay action. You know, it's very clipped and sharp and to the point. How does writing screenplays inspire you with writing fiction, and what do each of those two types of styles, how do they inform each other with you?
Well, one of the most amazing things was when I got deep into writing screenplays was how utterly different it actually is. Like, you think it's probably quite different, but it's really just a completely different medium in every way. And I think it really helps with making you very good at knowing the power of individual words. Because sometimes writing a novel, and it's what I do like about novels, but you have a lot of freedom, and you kind of think like, oh, you know what, it'll be cool to start the scene here, even though I don't have to, but it's kind of, I can do it because this is kind of cool and stuff. But in a screenplay, it's like you fight for every line of space. So it kind of gives you a different, especially on the editing process. When you're editing a novel, you look at it quite differently than you probably would have. Have you ever written any screenplays or messed around with it?
I have, actually, and I learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
When I was a younger writer, I had a screenplay that I had written based on some Bukowski short stories that got a little bit of traction. And I was able to speak to Linda Bukowski, his widow, about it.
That's really cool.
But I did learn a lot, because what I was thinking about with your book is that writing a screenplay is a lot like writing or creating a puzzle, right? And the action is it's in present tense, you know, scene starts, night or day, you know, it's just, and yours reminds me a lot of that.
I try to echo that a little, because I think it wasn't even so much intentional. I'm very visual when I see it. I see it in my head like a film very much. And what fascinates me is the idea that the reader could be observing this very much. Now there is a window into the characters' thoughts and stuff, although they're done in such a way that it's kind of blended into the kind of prose itself. But even still, like, there is that window into it. But I do love the idea of just kind of watching it and trying to sort of interpret it, as opposed to being very informed. I kind of like that play on having to figure it out a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. So there's this idea that, you know, when people are writing, you get in the zone, you know, that phrase, right? And a lot of times when I'm in the zone, it feels like I'm watching a movie, right? In my mind, it's kind of unfolding in that way. Is that way for you too, when you're thinking about writing fiction? Yeah.
Although, you know, it's funny. Writing a novel is such a slower process, and I find that I'm sure everybody does who writes, it's kind of like watching a movie, but on slow motion, slow motion, to the point where it's like you could spend a whole day on basically just a portion of a scene, and maybe on a good day, a full scene, but you're kind of just inching this scene across, and playing it and replaying it in your head for hours, and it's kind of a painful thing. As much as I like it, it's like it's not always easy. It's like painfully slow, and the screenplays are a bit of fun because it's different. I mean, on a good day, like you could do I don't know, a few pages of a screenplay,
Yeah.
and that's a different thing.
Right. And you're leaving a lot to the interpretation of the director and the director of photography, where when you set up a
Yeah.
scene, it's so simple.
Yeah, it feels a bit bare bones at times, I think, as
Mhm.
well. It's harder to maybe get excited about it at the end of your day. Maybe it can be nice, when you've written a nice passage in a novel and you kind of know, you're like, oh, I like that one. It's a very
Right.
rewarding feeling. In a screenplay, like I'm gonna have to see that this whole script by the end, and I'm gonna have to like move things around, and it's harder as well to have that kind of objective view of how it's
Right.
doing.
Yeah, the screenplay I wrote for the Bukowski stories, they were stories in his book, South of No North. Right. And I learned a lot about his writing style by pulling it apart, right? And pulling out the dialogue and then looking
Mm,
how he set up a scene and how I would set up a scene in a screenplay compared to how he set up a scene. And I still to this day think about that, when I am introducing a scene or a character, how it was pulling that apart and trying to do it as efficient as possible, right? With the right
yeah.
word.
Well, I think it's a really good. I mean, anyone listening who hasn't maybe mess around with one or the other. Like doing both is such a great learning experience, even if you don't intend to do much else with it. It really does restructure the way you see scenes
Mm-hmm.
and words and images, which is most important because the screenplay is first and foremost a picture told with images. The words actually matter less, and even the dialogue matters less. What matters is the images and the structure. And that's a
Right.
very, very different way to come about it than a novel. So to
Sure.
have those two perspectives on either end, I think is you can find a nice happy medium and let them inform each other. So I do recommend it big time.
So you have a lot of narrative threads in the new book, a lot of storylines. So when you were getting ready to write this book, did you have some prep beforehand? Where did you write an outline, or I imagine you had some kind of board like you see in the crime shows where you get the strings.
Yeah,
I was thinking like, how did you tie some of these things up because you were juggling a lot of balls.
yeah,
So
that
can you
was
just
it was
talk
actually
about
very
that?
hard. It was hard. So I kind of went into this novel with the goal of almost writing an anti Nobody Move, which is the novel that came before this. And in that sense, it was very plot focused and it was kind of simple and it was kind of wraps up neatly at the end. In this one, I kind of, and it's also it was quite tight. Like just every scene tried to move toward the ending. And this one, I just wanted to do the opposite in every regard. So I wanted to kind of make it more character focused, more literary. I wanted to have a bit of a more messy ending. I wanted it to wander a bit. I wanted the plot to kind of like go left and right. And there's scenes in there which don't need to be there, but I kind of like them because they just give this feel of like kind of like you're following them slowly down a dark path as opposed to like a train to the end. But it got really tough when I realized I was going to do three plot lines in three separate years that had to relate. I remember there was points where I was tearing my hair out and I was like, oh no. But I think pushing myself through that actually really helped me out because I just felt like after that, okay, I'm a better writer after this. Because I felt like, okay, I'd maybe just about pull that off. And I think it'll be easy if I go back to a more simple format because I don't really want to do that again.
Yeah.
Done it now. Happy to not do three plot lines again. Um, and as regards to outlining, it was a bit of both. I mean, you definitely have to outline that. But again, I wanted this novel to feel a bit more organic than that. I didn't want it to feel clinical and too outlined. So I kind of just let them see where it took me as well. And there was a lot of revising. And there was a lot
Mhm.
of just simply restructuring because the way the plot lines work, they all inform each other. So you learn something in one and it changes your perception of the other and possibly the other two even. So it was about knowing when to reveal that information as well, and without creating a plot hole or some kind of problem in doing
Mhm.
that. That was hard as well. So yeah, it was a unique process this time. I don't know if it would apply next time.
Yeah, I really like the main character, Mickey O'Rourke, which it was a running joke because his name sounds similar to actor Mickey Rourke. And it also kind of seemed like he was only just slightly aware of who Mickey Rourke was. So it was
Yeah,
kind of funnier to everybody else than him.
I never
That
thought of it that way, but that is actually probably quite true.
right. And what I liked about him is that his part in the novel, there was a lot of kind of remorseful tone to it. You can almost pull him out and just have a literary novel just on his like day to
Yeah,
day.
well, I mean, you could too because he's the PI, right? I mean, there's probably an endless amount of individual stories you could do with Mickey. So yeah, I've thought about him a lot. He interests me.
What was it about having a character? Because he's 78, right? He's pretty old. What was it about having a protagonist like that that interests you? Was it the mournful bit of him being older?
Yeah, well, I think in a way, to me, Porno Valley, and this I didn't realize this till the end, but I think it's kind of a weird love story because all three plot lines in some form focus on love, like either a twisted romance, lost love, grief, and maybe even artificial love that wasn't love at all. Um, and I guess it's just good. It's just contrast between you've got Richie in Alabama, and they're young, and they should be at the what you know their life the whole life ahead of them, and instead they're kind of just plunging headfirst into this very dark place. While Mickey had lived his whole life, and he kind of looks back regretfully, but also quite fondly. There's a kind of there's almost two strong feelings in Mickey at once, and I think it's both positive and negative. He longs for a certain time, and yet he's very glad it happened, and he knows it had to end. So he's also quite contented with it. And also, I think just simply, I figured, well, there's probably got to be a PI in here, but what have I not seen before? And I was like, I definitely haven't seen a near 80-year-old dude going around that. And what I like about Mickey is that everybody underestimates him because of this fact. They just see
Yeah,
some old guy and they kind of shrug him off, but he's actually really good at what he does. So it's kind of his secret power.
right. Yeah,
So yeah,
this new novel I've been working on, my protagonist is 65. It was interesting. I found some parallels between your book and and we didn't even talk about this in advance, but my character, people, they just think of him as kind of a curmudgeon, but he was a boxer as a young man, and he doesn't start shit. But when people mess with him, he ends it. He's not. He doesn't blink an eye if someone throws a fist. He starts punching people, and I thought that
sounds
was
like Mickey
interesting.
Rourke too.
Right. And I thought it was interesting that your character was very similar. People underestimated him because he looked pretty old, but yeah, he was very good at what he does.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that. It has a really cool premise. Your
Thanks,
novel.
man. So there are a couple of things that run through your work that I noticed that intersect with your personal life. One is your love for music, and one is your personal politics. Um, One of the things in this new book is that you had mentioned, or the narrator mentioned, some of the music that's out at the time. They're in Tower Records. The narrator's kind of telling some of the music that's out. He even calls Limp Bizkit new metal abomination, and the new Red Hot Chili Peppers album as being one that ruled. So first, let's talk about music a little bit. How does music inspire your writing, and you wanting to talk about it in your work?
Yeah, well, music is, I mean, it's kind of inextricably linked to everything I do. It's just I'm just always listening to music. So and I grew up as well. I think it was like the first thing I really kind of liked in an autonomous way that I found for myself. Because I certainly didn't get it from anywhere else that I can recall. I just remember always like MTV was on, and I just loved it. I loved everything as well. Like I loved everything. There was not a song I didn't like. Um, and I play it all the time. And as well, I think it's kind of the only thing that suit. Like I find that like I'm kind of an anxious guy a lot of the time, and I feel like music just really calms me down, especially if I'm quite nervous or something in a way that's kind of like uncomfortable. If I just put music on after a few songs, I'll like chill out a little. So I guess it was just inevitable it would find its way into everything I write. It was not intentional yet again. I think it's part of also seeing it in a very film way because you just hear it too. And I wanted that sound to be in it. And then maybe people would like, especially if they haven't heard the song or something, because you don't know it. A lot of young readers these days, maybe they don't even know what the hell half those references are. So maybe they'll look it up and listen to it.
Do you listen to music while you write? Like actually listen while you write?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I do
I find
too.
again it helps me actually concentrate because it narrows my thoughts.
Excellent. So what's your favorite stage of the writing process? Do you like first draft? Do you like revision? Where is it that you feel like you're actually enjoying yourself as a writer the most?
I do love polishing that end, that
Mm.
final draft, because it's well, you know, you've made it to the end, haven't you? So you, because I always feel, I don't know if maybe you feel the same, but I always think this is the one that I'm not going to be able to finish. This is the one that's going to prove that I'm not meant for this, and that I shouldn't be doing it, and that I don't even like it.
All of my
And
books
then
are
you
like
get
that.
there. Yeah, exactly. And then you get there and you're like, oh my God, I did it again somehow. So you feel pretty cool. And also I guess it's kind of good. Like it's at least in your own mind, like it's a lot better than when you started maybe. Although I do think like my final drafts aren't so different from my first ones. They're kind of just cleaned up generally. They're not like so different for the most part. Um, but I have a funny relationship with the first draft, and I don't know. This is something like people give me different answers when I ask. But I kind of hate it in a way. But I also love it though. But I do kind of hate it. Like it's definitely like I when I wake up and it's like, right, here we go. I'm kind of like a little I'm not so excited, you know. It's like 9 hours or 10 hours sometimes more of just sitting there and like bleeding it out slowly. Do you like that the first draft?
You know, the first draft to me in my process feels like I'm running a sprint. And I gave myself permission a few books ago that if I ever got to a point where I didn't know what was going to happen or how the scene would work, I would just kind of skip it and just keep going, right? I'd just put a little quick note, asterisk, 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 come back, and I would go back to it in the revision part. And so a lot of times the first draft just kind of feels like a dream, right? It just happens. And all of a sudden
Yeah.
I have like a certain amount of pages and it's like, oh, wow, I got to the end of that. But my favorite part's the revision part, because then I can kind of go back and particularly when a scene's opening, I can go, okay, how do I kind of make this a little more magical and kind of, uh, I really enjoy the revision part the most because it feels like I've told people before, it's like putting the clothes on the skeleton, right? It becomes the thing that I want it to be instead of just, points A, B, C, D.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that like, you know, like I always think of when they're sculpting an amazing sculpture, but they start off with just a block of just
Mm-hmm.
shapeless mass.
Right.
But then by the end, you've got this exquisite kind of intricately carved thing. So that's how I feel when I get to the end. In
Yeah.
reality, though, I don't know if you find this, but after that, though, when it's actually finished and it's kind of coming out or is out, suddenly, I don't know, I don't really like it anymore.
I feel the same
I'm
way.
just, I'm moved on and I
I'm
have to
sick
move
of it
on.
at that point.
Yeah. And I don't even know anymore if it's good or anything by that point. I'm like, oh my God, like I can't even tell anymore. And I just try not to think about it and I just move on. It's kind of sad though, because you never get that moment of like real pride. It's very short lived. And then you just have to move on to the next project.
Yeah. I understand. I think, yeah, so I have 3 editors for my books, and every time they come back and I have to do those little revisions with the red, whatever they did with their red pen, I hate that part because it
Yeah.
makes me start to hate it. It makes me start to
Yeah. That's
feel like,
absolutely, that's, yeah. I'm
yeah,
the same.
this must just be garbage. Look at all these red marks,
Yeah. It's a
So,
very, what's the word though? It's a very humbling experience. It really keeps you, it stops you from starting to think things you don't want to think as a creative person. Because unfortunately, it's just better to come from a place of like trying to prove yourself all the time, I feel.
mhm.
I think that leads to good art as opposed to thinking we know what we're doing too much. So yeah, I dread that moment as well.
Yeah. I think that's where I kind of grew as a writer, is accepting some of the edits and the criticism and the suggestions without um, just really beating myself up, just really trying to take it in and think, is this going to make it better? Because that's what your editor's supposed to do anyway. They're supposed to help you make it better, not criticize you. I think a lot of newbies take the criticism to heart too much and let it
Well,
affect
I
them.
would actually go as far as to say, you know, making it as a writer or whatever is fundamentally linked to your ability to take criticism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that stops a lot of people. I mean, I think, and I also think it's really just hard work. I don't know if so-called talent has too much to do with it. If you can take criticism and you just work harder than the other guy, like you will be fine. You know,
Totally.
that's really all it is.
All right. Well, this is the time of the show where we do the lightning round. It's a format that we got from inside the actor's studio, but it's not their format. They took it from Marcel Proust and Bernard Pivot. Philip Elliott, are you ready for the lightning round?
I'm ready.
What's your favorite word?
Forgive.
What's your least favorite word?
Hello. It's a stupid answer, but that word irritates the hell out of me.
What turned you on?
Passion in all
And
forms.
what turned you off?
Judgmentalness as a quality in people.
So what is your idea of happiness?
Very simple. Writing for a living without fear of poverty. Just that knowledge, that certainty that I could do it. Not even rich, just pay the bills. That's happiness.
Who is your favorite author?
Dennis Johnson, the late great Dennis Johnson.
Good choice. If you could be a character from a well-known novel, who would that be?
I don't know. This is a tough one. I would probably be Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. Is pretty badass. But when I finally became king at the end, spoilers, I would renounce my kingship and give away all my wealth to the people.
You just gave away the plot. What profession other than your own would you want to attempt?
I probably would have been a musician if I wasn't a writer, but I kind of sucked at that, so I'm glad it didn't work out that way. Although sometimes I'm very sad it didn't work out that way.
Yeah. What instrument would you have played?
I was a drummer like most properly. I had a little period when I was trying to do guitar and other things, but really I should have stuck behind the kit.
Yeah. What profession would you least want to do?
I will die before I go back to minimum wage retail.
I agree. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you reach the check-in desk?
I'm sorry. Just those two words, that's all.
That's good. All right, Philip, Elliott, thank you very much. Good luck with your new book, Porno Valley. It's excellent. Everybody go out and buy it.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
This has been a presentation of Austin Liti Limits, made possible with help from our good friends at Blue Ink Review, where typing "the end" is just the beginning. Find out more at blueinkreview.com.